You know what's wild? The thing stopping you from focusing isn't distraction. It's not your phone, it's not the notifications, it's not even the people around you. It's the story you're telling yourself about what work is supposed to feel like. You think focus should be easy, automatic. That if you just had more discipline, you'd sit down and knock out 8 hours of deep work without breaking a sweat. And when you can't, when you find yourself checking email for the third time in 10 minutes, you think something's wrong with you. But here's what's actually happening. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. Scanning for threats, looking for urgent information, trying to keep you safe by staying alert to everything around you. That's not a bug, that's a feature. The problem is, the feature's outdated. Because the world your brain evolved for doesn't exist anymore. Back then, missing a signal could get you killed. Now, missing a Slack message gets you nothing. Maybe a follow-up message an hour later. That's it. But your nervous system doesn't know the difference. It treats every notification like a predator in the grass, and you're trying to do deep work in the middle of that. Seneca wrote about this. Not about Slack, obviously, but about busyness, about how people confuse activity with accomplishment. He said most people don't actually live. They just exist in a state of constant distraction, running from thing to thing, never settling into anything long enough to actually do it well. He called it a kind of death, living your whole life and never actually being present for any of it. That's what modern work does to you. It convinces you that being available is the same as being valuable, that responding quickly is more important than thinking deeply, that if you're not constantly connected, you're somehow not working hard enough. But the real ones know better. The people doing work that actually matters, they disappear. They protect their attention like it's the most valuable resource they have. Because it is. Time you can get more of, money you can make back. But attention? Once it's fractured, it takes hours to reassemble. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He had the most demanding job in the world, running an empire. Constant decisions, constant crises, people needing things from him every second of every day. And you know what he did? He single-tasked. He writes about it in his meditations. One thing at a time. Fully. Completely. Not because he had some superhuman ability to focus, but because he knew that splitting his attention meant doing everything poorly. He'd rather do one thing with his full mind than 10 things with fragments. That frequency you're hearing right now, 528 hertz. It's called the miracle tone. Not because it performs miracles, but because of what it does to your stress response. It literally reduces cortisol, that hormone that floods your system when you're overwhelmed. When you're trying to track 15 different threads at once, this frequency tells your nervous system, we're not in danger, we can settle, we can focus on one thing. The thing about deep work is it's not natural, not anymore. We've trained ourselves out of it. Every time you check your phone while waiting in line, you're training your brain that boredom is dangerous, that empty space needs to be filled, that you should always be consuming something. And then you wonder why sitting with one task for 2 hours feels impossible. It's not that you can't focus, it's that you've taught yourself not to. Think about the last time you did something that actually required your full attention. Not scrolling, not watching something while half paying attention. Actually doing something complex, something that made you think. How long did it take before you reached for your phone? For most people, 5 minutes, maybe 10. That's not a moral failing, that's conditioning. You've been training yourself to context switch for years. Every notification, every tab you open while working on something else, every time you check email real quick in the middle of a task. You're building neural pathways that make distraction feel normal and focus feel uncomfortable. The uncomfortable part is important because deep work is supposed to feel uncomfortable at first. Your brain resists it, not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because focus is metabolically expensive. Your brain burns a ton of energy when it's actually concentrating, and your brain's primary job is to conserve energy. So it tries to redirect you, tells you to check something, to take a break, to do something easier, And if you don't understand what's happening, you believe it. You think you need the distraction. You think you can't focus. You think something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Your brain's just doing its job, trying to save energy, trying to keep you comfortable. But comfort is the enemy of deep work. Seneca said something about this that hits different now. He said, being busy is easy. Anyone can fill their day with tasks, with meetings, with emails, with things that feel productive but don't actually move anything forward. That's the lazy choice. The hard choice? Choosing what not to do. Protecting your time for work that actually matters. Most people never make that choice. They let urgency dictate their day. Whatever's screaming loudest gets their attention. And at the end of the day, they've been busy for 8 hours and accomplished nothing that required their actual brain. You know that feeling. You've had those days where you worked hard all day and at the end you can't even remember what you did. Just tasks, emails, meetings, Slack messages. Busy work. The kind of work that feels important in the moment and meaningless later. That's not deep work. That's shallow work pretending to be important. The real cost of distraction isn't the time you lose. It's the cognitive residue. Every time you switch tasks, part of your attention stays with the previous task. It doesn't fully release. So you're never actually giving anything your full focus. You're always operating at 60%, maybe 70% on a good day. And you wonder why everything takes longer than it should. Context switching isn't free. Every time you check email in the middle of writing something, there's a tax. Your brain has to unload what it was doing, load the new context, process it, respond, then try to reload what you were originally working on. That's not instant. It takes time, energy, focus. Studies show it can take 23 minutes to fully return to a task after an interruption. 23 minutes. And most people interrupt themselves every 3 to 5 minutes. Do the math. You never actually return. You're spending your entire day in a state of partial attention. This is why you're exhausted at the end of the day even when you didn't accomplish anything significant. You burned all your energy switching between contexts, not doing actual deep work. Marcus would probably say you're not working on the right things. You're working on whatever pulls your attention. And attention is easily pulled, especially by things that feel urgent, things that trigger your stress response, things that make you feel needed. But feeling needed isn't the same as being effective. You can spend your whole day responding to urgent things and never touch the important things, the things that actually move your life forward, the things that require deep thought, strategy, creativity, the things you actually want to be known for. Those things don't have notifications, they don't send you urgent messages. They sit there quietly waiting for you to give them attention. And if you never do, they never get done. And 5 years pass, and you're still in the same place wondering why you never made progress on what actually matters. That's the trap. Urgency feels like importance. But it's not. Most urgent things are someone else's priority, not yours. Most urgent things could wait. Most urgent things don't actually matter a week from now. But you can't see that in the moment. In the moment, everything feels urgent. Everything feels like it needs your immediate attention. And if you believe that, you'll spend your whole life reacting, never creating, never building, never doing work that requires your full mind. The frequency is working even if you don't feel it. 528 hertz operates below conscious awareness. It's affecting your nervous system, telling it you're safe, that you don't need to stay alert to every possible threat, that you can relax into focus. This isn't mystical, it's physics. Sound waves create vibrations. Vibrations affect your physiology. Certain frequencies calm your stress response. Others energize you. This one? It creates the conditions for sustained focus without the crash. You know that feeling when you force yourself to focus through sheer willpower? And by hour 3, you're completely drained. That's because you're fighting your nervous system the whole time. You're working against yourself. forcing focus when your body thinks it should be alert to threats. This frequency removes that fight. It's not making you focus. It's removing the obstacles to focus. Big difference. Seneca had this thing he'd do. He'd look at how people spent their days and he'd calculate how much time they actually owned. Not how much time they had. How much they owned. Time that was actually theirs to use however they wanted. For most people, almost none. They'd give their morning to email, their afternoon to meetings, their evening to recovering from the day. And they'd call that living. But Seneca said that's not living. That's just being used, being a resource that other people extract value from. He said if you don't protect your time, people will take all of it. Not because they're malicious, just because they can. Because you let them. Because you never drew a boundary and said, this time is mine. Deep work requires that boundary. It requires you to say no to things, to close the door, to turn off notifications, to disappoint people who expect immediate responses. And that feels uncomfortable. Because you've been conditioned to believe that being available is part of your job. But here's what nobody tells you. The people who expect immediate responses, they're not the ones doing deep work. They're not the ones creating things that matter. They're managing their own distraction by distributing it to everyone around them. And if you accept that as normal, you become part of that system. You become someone who can't focus because you're too busy helping other people avoid focus. That's not collaboration. That's contamination. Real talk. You feel guilty when you disconnect, when you close Slack, when you don't respond to emails for 3 hours. You feel like you're letting people down, like you're not being a team player, like you're somehow failing at your job. But what if your job isn't to be available? What if your job is to think, to create, to solve problems that actually require your brain? Those things can't happen in the margins. They can't happen between meetings. They can't happen while you're monitoring 6 different channels waiting for something urgent. They require blocks of uninterrupted time. And if you never protect that time, those things never happen. And then you wonder why you're not advancing, why you're not growing, why you feel stuck doing the same level of work year after year. It's because you never created space for the work that would move you forward. You were too busy being available. Marcus wrote this line that I think about constantly. He said, "Confine yourself to the present, not because the past and future don't matter, but because they're not where your power is. Your power is here, now, in this task, in this moment. Every time you're working on something and thinking about something else, you're splitting your power. You're giving 40% to the task in front of you and 60% to worrying about other things. And then the task takes twice as long because you only gave it half your mind. And then you feel behind, so you work faster, which means you focus less, which means everything takes longer, which means you feel more behind. It's a spiral. And the only way out is to stop, to give one thing your complete attention, to confine yourself to the present. That's not easy. Your mind doesn't want to stay put. It wants to plan, to review, to rehearse conversations, to worry about things that might happen. That's what minds do. They time travel. They leave the present and go somewhere else. But every time your mind leaves, your effectiveness drops. You're physically here, but mentally elsewhere. And the work suffers, not because you lack skill, but because you're not actually present for it. Presence is the whole game. You can have all the time in the world and accomplish nothing if you're not present. Or you can have 2 focused hours and change everything. It's not about how much time you have. It's about how much of yourself you bring to that time. Most people bring a fraction. They're there in body, but their mind is scattered across 15 different concerns. And they call that working. But it's not working. It's just being physically present while mentally absent. The frequency helps with this. Not by forcing you to be present, but by calming the part of your nervous system that keeps pulling you away. That part that creates anxiety about everything you're not doing while you're doing this one thing. That anxiety is what fragments you, not the actual demands on your time, The anxiety about the demands. The story you tell yourself about what will happen if you don't respond immediately, if you don't check, if you don't stay on top of everything. But here's the thing. You can't stay on top of everything. Nobody can. The moment you accept that everything can be handled is the moment you stop trying to handle everything. And that's when you can finally focus on something. Seneca talks about this. The tyranny of busy. How it makes you feel important. How it gives you an excuse for not doing difficult things. I'd work on that big project, but I'm so busy with these urgent things. Translation. I'd do the work that scares me, but I'm too comfortable staying busy with work that doesn't. Busy is safe. Busy means you're needed. Busy means you're contributing. Busy means you don't have to face the possibility that when you actually sit down to do deep work, it might not be good, it might be hard, it might expose that you're not as far along as you thought. So you stay busy, and you call it work, and years pass, and you never do the thing you actually wanted to do, because you were too busy doing things that felt urgent but didn't actually matter. That's the trap. Busy feels virtuous. It feels like productivity. It feels like you're winning. But you're not winning. You're just running in place, burning energy without going anywhere. The people who actually build things, they're not busy. They're focused. There's a difference. Busy is scattered. Focused is intentional. Busy is reactive. Focused is deliberate. Busy is exhausting. Focused is energizing. You know this already. You've had those days where you worked on one thing for 4 hours and felt amazing after. Accomplished, clear, energized. And you've had those days where you did 20 things and felt depleted, scattered, unclear about what you even did. Same amount of time, different experience, different results. The difference? Depth. Depth is what matters, not breadth, not speed, not responsiveness. Depth. Going into something far enough that you actually create value, that you actually solve the problem, that you actually build something worth building. You can't do that while context switching. You can't do that while monitoring messages. You can't do that while staying available. You have to disappear for a while. You have to disconnect. You have to trust that the world will keep turning without your immediate input. And it will. The urgent thing that felt life or death at 9 a.m., by 1 p.m. it's either resolved without you, or it was never that urgent to begin with. Most things are like that. They feel critical in the moment. They're not. Marcus knew this. He'd get reports from the edges of the empire, urgent situations, crises, things that demanded immediate attention, and sometimes he'd respond. But often, he'd wait, he'd think. He'd give himself time to understand the situation before reacting. That drove people crazy. They wanted immediate decisions, immediate action. They thought speed was leadership. But Marcus knew better. He knew that reacting quickly often meant reacting poorly. That the best decisions come from thinking, not from urgency. So he'd take time. Even when people pressured him, even when it seemed like waiting was irresponsible, he'd think it through, consider the angles, then act decisively, not quickly, decisively. That's deep work applied to decision-making, not rushing, not reacting, thinking, considering, then acting from clarity instead of pressure. You're allowed to work like that. You're allowed to say, I need 3 hours to think about this before I respond. You're allowed to close your door. You're allowed to miss messages while you're focused. You're allowed to prioritize depth over availability. You don't need permission, but you feel like you do. You feel like working this way is somehow selfish, like you're putting your needs above the team's needs. But that's backwards. The team needs you at your best, not at your most available. Your best work doesn't happen in the margins. It doesn't happen between interruptions. It happens when you go deep, when you give something your full attention, when you think instead of react. That's not selfish. That's how value gets created. That's how problems actually get solved. That's how you move from junior to senior to expert. By doing work that requires your whole brain, not by being really good at responding quickly. Nobody ever got promoted for being the fastest at Slack. They got promoted for solving hard problems, for creating things, for thinking strategically. And all of those things require extended focus. They require saying no to everything else so you can say yes to the thing that matters. The guilt you feel about that, that's programming. That's years of being told that responsiveness is professionalism, that being available is being committed, that if you're not always on, you're not working hard enough. But the real ones know that's nonsense. The people doing work that actually matters, they're unavailable. They're protecting their attention. They're drawing boundaries. And they're producing work that moves things forward instead of just keeping up with the current. There's a difference between keeping up and moving forward. Keeping up is maintenance. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. If all you do is keep up, you stay in the same place. You never advance. You never grow. You never do the work that would change your trajectory. Moving forward requires deep work. Work that pushes your edge. Work that makes you uncomfortable. Work that you can't do while distracted. And if you never create space for that work, you never move forward. You just keep up. Forever. That's what most people do. They keep up for 40 years and call it a career. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But if you want more, if you want to grow, if you want to build something that matters, you have to protect time for deep work. Not occasionally, regularly, consistently, as a non-negotiable part of your schedule. The frequency you're hearing is doing something specific. 528 Hz is associated with reduced cortisol levels. Cortisol is your stress hormone, the thing that floods your system when you feel overwhelmed, when you're tracking too many things, when you feel behind. High cortisol makes focus impossible. It keeps you in a state of heightened alertness, scanning for threats, ready to react. That's useful if you're actually in danger. It's counterproductive when you're trying to think. This frequency helps regulate that. It signals to your body that you're safe, that you can settle, that you don't need to stay in reactive mode. And when your body believes that, your mind can finally focus. You don't have to understand how it works for it to work. You don't have to believe in it. It's physics. Sound waves affect biology. This particular frequency happens to calm your nervous system. That's not mystical, that's measurable. And when your nervous system calms, focus becomes possible. Not easy, but possible. You still have to choose it. You still have to direct your attention. But at least you're not fighting your own physiology the whole time. Here's what nobody talks about. The reason deep work feels impossible isn't just external distraction, it's internal distraction. The voice in your head that says you should be doing something else, that what you're working on isn't urgent enough, that you're wasting time going deep when there are so many other things that need attention. That voice is loud, and it's convincing, because it sounds rational, it sounds responsible, it sounds like the voice of someone who has their priorities straight, but it's not. It's the voice of anxiety pretending to be productivity. Real productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right things deeply. And the right things are rarely urgent. They're important. There's a difference. Urgent things demand attention now. Important things create value over time. Most people spend their entire lives responding to urgent things and never touching important things. And then they wonder why nothing changes, why they never advance, why they feel like they're running but never arriving anywhere. It's because urgent and important aren't the same. And if you can't tell the difference, you'll spend your whole life busy and unfulfilled. Seneca wrote about a guy like this. Someone who was always rushing, always busy, always stressed about everything he had to do. And Seneca's advice? Stop. Just stop. Figure out what actually matters and do that. Let everything else fall away. Sounds simple. It's not. Because letting things fall away feels irresponsible. It feels like giving up. It feels like you're failing at something. But you're not. You're just being honest about your limits, about what you can actually do well, about what deserves your attention. You can't do everything. Nobody can. The moment you accept that, you stop trying to do everything and start choosing what to do. And that choice is where your power lives. Every yes is a no to something else. Every time you say yes to a meeting, you're saying no to deep work. Every time you say yes to immediate availability, you're saying no to long-term progress. You can't have both. Not fully. So you choose. Most people let other people choose for them. They say yes to whatever's asked, because saying no feels uncomfortable. And then they look at their calendar and realize they have no time for work that actually matters, no time for thinking, no time for creating, just obligations. Things other people decided were important. That's not a schedule, that's surrender. Marcus had this practice. Every morning he'd review his day and he'd ask, what can I eliminate? Not what do I need to add? What can I eliminate? What meetings don't actually need me? What decisions can wait? What problems will resolve themselves if I do nothing? Most of them, it turns out. Most problems don't need your immediate intervention. Most meetings don't need you there. Most urgent things can wait 3 hours while you focus. But you'll never know that if you never try. If you always respond immediately, if you always make yourself available, you'll just assume everything needs you right now. And you'll stay trapped in reactive mode forever. Try this. Next time something feels urgent, wait. Not forever, just 3 hours. See what happens. Most of the time, either someone else handles it or it resolves itself, or you realize it wasn't that urgent to begin with. And those 3 hours? You could have spent them doing work that actually required your brain, work that moved something forward, work that you'll remember a year from now. That's the trade-off. You can be immediately available for things that don't matter, or you can be occasionally unavailable for things that do. You can't be both. So choose. The people who choose depth over availability, they're the ones who advance. They're the ones who build things. They're the ones who get promoted. Not because they worked more hours, because they worked on things that mattered. The people who choose availability over depth, they stay busy, they feel needed, they're exhausted at the end of every day. And they never advance. Because being needed isn't the same as being valuable. You want to be valuable? Do work that requires thought. Work that takes time. Work that you can't do while distracted. That's where value comes from. Not from responding quickly, from thinking deeply. The thing about deep work is it compounds. The first hour is hard. You're fighting distraction. Your mind keeps wandering. You keep wanting to check things. That's normal. You're breaking conditioning. You're teaching your brain that it's safe to focus on one thing. Second hour gets easier. You're starting to build momentum, getting into flow. The work starts pulling you instead of you pushing it. That's when it gets good. That's when you do your best thinking. Third hour is where the magic happens. You're not just working on the problem anymore. You're understanding it at a deeper level. You're seeing connections you wouldn't have seen in the first hour. You're doing work that actually moves things forward. But most people never get to the third hour. They interrupt themselves before they get there. They check email, they respond to a message, they break the momentum, and they have to start over. And starting over is hard, so they don't go deep, they stay shallow. And they wonder why their work doesn't improve. Depth requires sustained attention. You can't get there in 30-minute blocks. You can't get there between meetings. You need hours. Plural. And you need them regularly, not once a month. Weekly. Daily, if possible. That's how skills develop. That's how expertise builds. That's how you move from competent to excellent. By spending time at the edge of your ability. Not by doing things you already know how to do. By struggling with things that require your full attention. Shallow work doesn't make you better. It keeps you the same. It maintains your current level. Deep work is what pushes you forward. And if you never create space for it, you never improve. You just maintain. For years. Sometimes decades. That's why people plateau. Not because they stopped trying, because they stopped growing. And they stopped growing because they stopped doing work that required growth. They stayed comfortable. They stayed busy. They stayed shallow. Seneca would say that's not living. That's existing. Going through the motions. Filling time without filling yourself. He'd say if you're not growing, you're dying. Slowly. Imperceptibly. But dying nonetheless. Growth requires discomfort. It requires doing things that are hard. Things that make you uncertain. Things that might not work. And you can't do those things while distracted. You need your full attention. Your full presence. Your full commitment. That's what deep work gives you. Not just better output, better thinking, better problem solving, but growth. The kind that changes who you are. The kind that makes you more capable, more confident, more valuable. Not because you worked more hours. Because you worked on things that mattered. Because you went deep instead of staying shallow. Because you chose focus over distraction. Here's the part that's hard to accept. You're not going to be good at deep work immediately. Your first few sessions will be frustrating. You'll feel restless. You'll want to quit. You'll think you're not built for this kind of focus. You are. You're just out of practice. You've spent years training yourself to context switch, to stay distracted, to never settle into anything for long. And now you're trying to reverse that. It takes time. Be patient with yourself. The first week is rough. You're fighting conditioning. Your brain keeps pulling you away. That's normal. Keep going. Second week gets easier. Third week you start to notice a difference. After a month, it becomes natural, but you have to stick with it. You have to protect the time. You have to say no to interruptions. You have to disappoint people who expect immediate responses. That's the price. And it's worth it, because the alternative is spending your whole life distracted. Never quite present, never quite focused, never doing work that requires your full mind. Just managing, responding, keeping up, forever. That's not a life. That's a treadmill. And the only way off is to stop. To choose something different. To protect time for work that matters. Marcus would probably say you already know this. You already know that distraction isn't working. That busy isn't fulfilling. That something needs to change. You're not lacking information. You're lacking commitment. Commitment to protect your attention. To say no. To disappoint people. To be unavailable. To focus on things that matter instead of things that feel urgent. That commitment is uncomfortable. It feels selfish. It feels like you're letting people down. But you're not. You're just choosing to be effective instead of available. To be valuable instead of busy. To build instead of maintain. And the people who matter will understand. The people who don't, they were extracting value from your distraction. They were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. And when you set boundaries, they'll be upset. Let them. Your attention is yours. Your time is yours. Your focus is yours. You don't owe anyone immediate access to those things. You get to choose how you spend them. And if you choose depth, if you choose focus, if you choose work that matters, some people won't like it. That's okay. They'll adjust. Or they won't. Either way, it's not your problem. Your problem is doing work that's worth doing. And that requires focus. And focus requires protection. The frequency is still working. Even as you listen to this, even as you work, it's affecting your physiology, calming your stress response, creating conditions for sustained focus. You might not feel it. That's fine. It's working below conscious awareness, in your nervous system, in your stress hormones, in the parts of you that decide whether you're safe enough to focus or whether you need to stay alert. This frequency says you're safe. You can settle. You can give this task your full attention. There's no threat, nothing urgent that requires immediate response. You can be here, fully, completely. That message matters. Because most of your day, your nervous system thinks otherwise. It thinks everything is urgent. Everything needs attention. Everything could be a threat. And it keeps you in a state of low-level anxiety that makes deep focus impossible. This frequency interrupts that. It gives your nervous system a different message. And when your nervous system calms, your mind can finally settle into work. Not forced focus. Natural focus. The kind that feels effortless once you're in it. The kind that makes hours feel like minutes. The kind that produces your best work. You can't force that state. You can only create conditions for it. And one of those conditions is a calm nervous system. A body that feels safe. A mind that isn't scanning for threats. 528 Hz creates that condition, not by itself. You still have to choose focus. You still have to protect your attention. You still have to do the work. But at least you're not fighting your own biology while you do it. Seneca said something about time that changes how you see everything. He said it's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste a lot of it. Most people, he said, live as if they'll live forever. They spend time carelessly. They let other people take it. They fill it with things that don't matter. And then they get to the end and realize they never did the things they wanted to do. They never built what they wanted to build. They never became who they wanted to become. Not because they didn't have time. Because they didn't protect it. That's what deep work is really about. Not productivity, not output, not getting more done. It's about using your time for things that matter. Things that require your full self. Things that make you grow. You could spend your whole life responding to emails and never do that. You could be busy every single day and never create anything meaningful. You could work 80-hour weeks and never advance. Because busy isn't the same as effective. And effective isn't the same as meaningful. Meaningful work requires depth. It requires time. It requires focus. And if you don't protect those things, they don't happen. Not because you're not capable. Because you never created space for them. So create space. Protect it. Guard it. Say no to things that try to fill it. Be unavailable. Disappoint people who expect immediate access. Do work that requires your whole mind. Not because you have to. Because you want to. Because that's where growth lives. That's where meaning lives. That's where the work is that you'll remember in 10 years. Everything else is just noise. Busy work. Things that feel important in the moment and don't matter at all later. You can spend your whole life on those things. Most people do. Or you can choose something different. You can choose depth. Marcus wrote this toward the end of his life. He said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Not morbid, just honest. You don't have unlimited time. None of us do. So spend it on things that matter. Deep work matters. Not because it makes you more productive, because it makes you more you. It's where your best thinking happens, where your creativity lives, where you solve problems that actually interest you. Shallow work doesn't do that. Shallow work is just maintenance. Necessary, maybe, but not sufficient, not fulfilling, not the thing you want your life to be about. You know this already. You felt the difference between days where you went deep and days where you stayed shallow, between work that challenged you and work that just filled time, between presence and distraction. The choice is always there. Every day, every hour. You can choose depth or you can choose distraction. You can protect your attention or you can let it be scattered. You can do work that matters or you can stay busy. Neither is wrong, but only one leads to growth. Only one leads to meaning. Only one leads to becoming who you actually want to be. And that requires saying no, a lot, to meetings that don't need you, to messages that can wait, to people who want your time for things that don't align with what you're building, to urgency that isn't actually important. That's the hard part, not the focus, the boundaries, the willingness to disappoint, the courage to say, "I'm unavailable right now because I'm doing work that matters." Most people never develop that courage. They stay available, they stay busy, they stay distracted, and they wonder why nothing changes. Why they never advance, why they feel unfulfilled despite working hard. It's because they're working on the wrong things. Or the right things in the wrong way. Shallowly. Distractedly. Without full presence. And you can't do meaningful work that way. You can maintain, you can survive. But you can't thrive. You can't grow. You can't build something that matters. For that, you need depth. And depth requires protection. And protection requires boundaries. And boundaries require disappointing people who expect constant access. That's the price. And it's worth it. So there's that. The frequency will keep playing. Your work will keep demanding attention. The choice will keep presenting itself. Depth or distraction? Focus or fragmentation? Meaning or maintenance? Nobody can make that choice for you. Not your boss. Not your team. Not your family. Just you. Every day. Every hour. Every moment. You can choose to protect your attention. To go deep. To do work that matters. Or you can choose to stay available. To stay busy. To stay scattered. Both paths are open. One leads somewhere. The other just continues. Same place. Same level. Same work. Forever. Marcus would probably say you already know which path to take. You're not confused. You're just deciding whether you're willing to pay the price. Whether you're willing to be unavailable. To disappoint. To say no, that decision is yours. And it's waiting. Right now, in this moment. As you listen to this. As you work. As you choose what gets your attention next. Choose depth. Not because it's easy. Because it matters. Because it's where your best work lives. Because it's where you grow. Everything else is just noise. Something to sit with.